Evelyn Sterling had cultivated her backyard into a sanctuary. Every blade of zoysia grass was precisely manicured, every rose bush meticulously pruned, and the saltwater pool, a shimmering sapphire centerpiece, was her personal oasis. After years of the relentless churn of corporate life, retiring to this quiet suburban cul-de-sac had felt like stepping into a postcard. She relished her morning coffee on the patio, the gentle gurgle of the pool pump a soothing soundtrack, the distant chirping of birds the only intrusion. But every Eden, Evelyn knew, had its serpent. In her case, the serpent wore sensible shoes, sported an aggressively styled blonde bob, and chaired the Maple Creek Homeowners Association. Her name was Brenda Albright, and she was the self-appointed arbiter of all things proper and permissible within their community, a zealotry that often veered into the tyrannical. Evelyn's first brush with Brenda's particular brand of oversight had been over her prize Meyer lemon tree, a gift from her late husband. Its branches, Brenda had declared with an icy smile during a thinly veiled courtesy visit, extended a full 6 inches past the property line, violating Section 3, subsection B, paragraph 4 of the HOA bylaws regarding overhanging foliage. Evelyn, still grieving and new to the neighborhood, had trimmed it back, swallowing her indignation. Then came the unapproved color of her patio cushions, a vibrant coral that Brenda deemed too disruptive for the community's harmonious aesthetic. Evelyn had bought new, muted beige ones, again biting her tongue. She'd learned quickly that with Brenda, appeasement was the only path to peace, however temporary. This particular Tuesday, however, was supposed to be different. Her granddaughter, 8-year-old Lily, was coming for a week-long visit. Evelyn had spent the entire morning cleaning the pool, adjusting the chemical balance to perfection, and inflating a new flamingo float Lily had picked out online. The sun beat down, warming the patio tiles, and Evelyn allowed herself a moment of pure contentment. She imagined Lily's squeals of delight as she cannonballed into the sparkling water, her small, joyful presence filling the echoing silence of the house. Around noon, a sharp, insistent rapping at her front door shattered the quiet. Evelyn's shoulders tensed. She knew that knock. Brenda. Again. Taking a deep breath, Evelyn smoothed her sundress and walked to the door, pasting on a polite, if weary, smile. "Evelyn," Brenda announced, her voice a finely honed instrument of passive aggression. She held a clipboard, of course, and her lips were pursed tighter than a miser's wallet. "I trust you received the notice regarding the required landscape maintenance on the common greenway bordering your property?" "Good morning, Brenda." "Yes, I saw it. I plan to address it this weekend," Evelyn replied, trying to keep her tone even. The greenway was a strip of wild grass and weeds that abutted the back of her fence, a perennial point of contention. Brenda's eyes narrowed. "This weekend, Evelyn? The deadline was yesterday. And frankly, the condition of that section is appalling. It reflects poorly on all of us." She gestured vaguely towards the back of Evelyn's house, her gaze lingering a fraction too long on the pool. Evelyn felt an unwelcome prickle of unease. It was a common tactic: escalate a minor issue, then use the opportunity to scope out other perceived infractions. "I'm having family over, Brenda, and I'm afraid my priorities are a little shifted at the moment," Evelyn said, a hint of steel entering her voice. She refused to apologize for her granddaughter's visit. Brenda's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Family is certainly important, but so is upholding the standards of our community. I simply wouldn't want any unpleasantness to mar their visit." Her tone was laced with an unidentifiable threat, a chill that had nothing to do with the summer heat. Evelyn forced another smile. "Duly noted. Is there anything else?" "Not at this precise moment," Brenda said, her eyes sweeping over Evelyn's meticulously maintained front yard. "But do remember, Evelyn, the HOA has a zero-tolerance policy for repeated violations. Consequences can be quite Significant. With a final, chillingly ambiguous nod, Brenda turned and walked away, her back ramrod straight, leaving Evelyn with a sour taste in her mouth and a faint tremor in her hands. She tried to shake off the encounter, telling herself it was just Brenda being Brenda. But the unsettling feeling persisted. Evelyn headed back to the kitchen to make some iced tea, but as she walked past the sliding glass door leading to the patio, something in the pool caught her eye. A dark, sinuous movement beneath the perfectly blue surface. Her heart gave a sudden, hard lurch. At first, she thought it was a shadow, or maybe a discarded pool noodle caught in a strange current. But as she moved closer, her breath hit. The morning after Brenda Albright's aquatic assault, Evelyn Sterling woke with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. The initial shock had given way to a cold, hard resolve. There would be no frantic calls to animal control, no tearful recounting to sympathetic neighbors. This was personal. This was war, and Evelyn intended to win. Her first act was to secure her sanctuary. With Lily's imminent arrival, the pool was an immediate biohazard. She called a specialized pool cleaning service, explaining only that there had been a significant contamination event, and emphasizing the urgency. The service, accustomed to everything from raccoons to fallen trees, promised a crew by midday. While she waited, Evelyn meticulously scrubbed every inch of the patio, imagining Brenda's smug face with every swipe of the brush. Next, she reviewed the security footage again, not just of Brenda, but of the preceding days. She wanted to understand the full scope of Brenda's surveillance. It revealed nothing overtly suspicious beyond Brenda's usual prowling, but it solidified Evelyn's conviction. Brenda had been building to this. The Greenway complaint, the veiled threats about unpleasantness, they were all part of a calculated escalation. It's psychological warfare, Evelyn muttered to herself, pacing her living room. She's trying to break me. But Evelyn Sterling, a woman who had navigated decades of cutthroat corporate politics, knew a thing or two about psychological warfare. She just hadn't expected to wage it in her retirement, over Eels, with her HOA president. The pool cleaning crew, two burly men with grim expressions, arrived in a truck emblazoned with "AquaClean, we handle the dirty work." Evelyn met them at the gate, her face an impassive mask. "It's Eels," she stated, cutting straight to the chase. The younger man, tattooed and world-weary, raised an eyebrow. "Eels, ma'am? That's a new one. Freshwater or saltwater?" "I don't know," Evelyn admitted, a wave of disgust washing over her again. "They just appeared." She showed them the pool, and the men exchanged a look. "Someone dumped them," the older one grunted, his gaze sweeping the surroundings. "No way they got in here naturally." Evelyn remained silent, letting them draw their own conclusions. As they began the unpleasant task of netting the writhing creatures, Evelyn felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. What if they connected the dots to Brenda? She had to be careful. For now, the fewer people who knew the truth, the better. She paid them in cash, a generous tip, and asked them to be discreet, citing a sensitive family situation. Later that afternoon, with the pool finally sparkling clean and sanitized, Evelyn began to formulate her counterattack. She couldn't go directly to the HOA board. Brenda controlled the narrative there. She couldn't go to the police yet. While dumping eels in a pool was certainly a nuisance and potentially harmful, it wasn't exactly a high-priority crime. They might laugh her out of the station. She needed irrefutable proof, delivered in a way that would dismantle Brenda's power structure permanently. Her gaze fell on her laptop. Social media. The neighborhood Facebook group. That was Brenda's other domain, where she posted sanctimonious updates about bylaws and passive-aggressive reminders about community aesthetics. But it was also a public forum, a place where the truth could spread like wildfire, unmediated by Brenda's iron fist. Evelyn spent hours researching. She learned about different types of eels, their habitats, and their ecological impact. She discovered that releasing non-native species into a closed environment could be classified as an environmental hazard. She also researched legal precedents for harassment and property damage in HOA communities. She was building her case, not for a courtroom, but for the court of public opinion. The next morning, Lily arrived, a whirlwind of pink and glitter. Evelyn hugged her tightly, a fierce protectiveness surging through her. "Grandma, is the pool ready?" Lily asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Evelyn's heart ached. "It is, sweet pea. But Grandma thought we could do some arts and crafts this morning and then maybe go to the park?" She forced a cheerful tone, pushing down the memory of the eels. She would never tell Lily what had happened. As Lily happily settled down with a box of crayons, Evelyn slipped away to her study. She downloaded the security footage of Brenda from the cloud, saving it to a secure drive. She then began crafting a post for the Maple Creek Residents Forum. This needed to be perfect. Not accusatory, not emotional, but factual and devastating. The crisp, professional voice of Detective Miller had been a balm to Evelyn's frayed nerves. It had cemented the transition from personal vendetta to official inquiry, lending a gravity to the situation that Brenda, in her petty self-importance, had never intended. Evelyn spent the next hour gathering her evidence: the original, high-resolution video file, a timeline of Brenda's previous violations, and thinly veiled threats, and printouts of the explosion on the Maple Creek Residents Forum. She felt an almost surgical precision in her actions, a stark contrast to the churning fear and disgust that had initially gripped her. The doorbell chimed again, pulling her from her methodical preparations. It was Detective Miller, a woman in her late 40s with shrewd, observant eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She was accompanied by a younger, equally serious officer, Officer Chen. Evelyn led them into her study, the room now a command center of sorts, a quiet battleground waiting for its next move. "Thank you for seeing us, Miss Sterling," Detective Miller began, settling into a chair, a notepad already open. "The video is certainly compelling, and the volume of calls we've received from residents is unusual. Can you walk us through what happened from your perspective?" Evelyn, calm and collected, recounted the events, Brenda's previous harassments, her visit that morning, the discovery of the eels, and finally, the undeniable footage. She played the video on her large monitor, pausing at the critical moment Brenda tipped the bucket. Officer Chen let out a low whistle. "Well, that's not something you see every day." Detective Miller's expression remained neutral, but her gaze was sharp. "Do you have any idea where Miss Albright might have obtained these animals, Miss Sterling? Or why she might target you specifically with such an act?" Evelyn paused, considering. "I have no proof of where she got them, but as for why, Brenda Albright is the head of our HOA. She thrives on control and intimidation. I've had several minor disagreements with her over trivial matters, landscaping, patio furniture color. I believe this was an escalation, a deliberate act to terrorize me and perhaps make an example." "An example for what?" Officer Chen asked, jotting notes. "For anyone who might dare to challenge her authority or simply not conform to her exacting standards," Evelyn replied, her voice tinged with a bitterness she hadn't realized she still harbored. "She's built a small empire of fear within this community." The detective stayed for nearly 2 hours, meticulously documenting everything, taking copies of the video, and even inspecting the pool area. They assured Evelyn that while the investigation was ongoing, they took acts of vandalism and potential harassment very seriously. As they left, Detective Miller paused at the door. "Miss Sterling, I would advise you to avoid any direct contact with Miss Albright for the time being. Let us handle it." Evelyn nodded, a silent promise. Direct contact was the last thing she wanted. She wanted justice, delivered cold and unyielding. The news of the police involvement spread through Maple Creek faster than the original video. Brenda Albright, usually seen as untouchable, was now a pariah. The Maple Creek Residents Forum, once her platform, had become a tribunal. Posts demanding her resignation from the HOA board multiplied by the minute. A special emergency meeting of the HOA was called for that evening, even before the police had made their first official move. Brenda's response, as observed by Evelyn through the virtual window of the Facebook group, was a masterclass in denial and victimhood. Initially, she deleted comments, then entire threads. When that proved futile against the torrent, she posted a lengthy, rambling statement. She claimed the video was fabricated, a deepfake designed to discredit her. She accused Evelyn of a smear campaign driven by personal vendettas and a blatant disregard for community standards. She even hinted at legal action for defamation. But it was too late. The residents had seen the Eels. They had seen Brenda. The evidence was undeniable, and her attempts to twist the narrative only served to fuel the outrage. Even her staunchest allies on the board seemed to be distancing themselves. That evening, Evelyn decided to attend the emergency HOA meeting, not to speak, but to observe. She arrived just as the small community hall was overflowing with agitated residents. Whispers and angry murmurs filled the air. When Brenda finally walked in, her usual confident stride was replaced by a hesitant, almost furtive shuffle. Her blonde bob seemed less aggressively styled, more disheveled. The clipboard was conspicuously absent. Brenda took her seat at the head of the table, flanked by the two other, visibly uncomfortable board members. The room fell silent, a palpable tension hanging heavy. "Thank you all for attending this evening." The clatter of the gavel echoing in the stunned silence was the last sound Brenda Albright truly registered before Detective Miller's firm hand guided her arm. The humiliation was a physical weight, pressing down on her, robbing her of breath, of dignity. Faces, once deferential or at least feigning respect, now openly sneered or looked away in righteous disgust. Evelyn Sterling, she noticed, remained impassive, a quiet, formidable presence in the third row. The sight fueled a fresh wave of impotent rage, even as fear gnawed at her insides. The drive to the police station was a blur of silence, broken only by the crackle of the police radio. Brenda, usually so meticulously composed, felt her carefully constructed world unraveling. Her hair felt disheveled, her suit suddenly too tight, too professional for the sordid reality she was hurtling towards. She, Brenda Albright, pillar of the community, arbiter of good taste, being taken in by the police? It was unthinkable. At the station, the fluorescent lights were harsh, unforgiving. She was led to a small, windowless interrogation room. A metal table, 2 chairs, and a cold, sterile silence. Officer Chin took notes, while Detective Miller sat opposite her, her gaze steady and unwavering. "Miss Albright," Detective Miller began, her voice devoid of emotion, "we have reviewed the video evidence submitted by Miss Sterling. It clearly shows you entering her property and depositing a bucket's worth of live eels into her swimming pool. Do you have anything to say about this?" Brenda's mind raced. Denial, she decided, was her only recourse. "This is preposterous. That video is doctored. It's a deep fake, a blatant attempt to slander my good name and undermine my work for the HOA." Her voice, however, cracked on the last word, betraying the tremor in her hands. Detective Miller leaned forward slightly, her expression unchanged. "Ms. Albright, we have the original, unedited footage. It's time-stamped, authenticated, and clearly shows you. Furthermore, we've had multiple residents confirm your identity in the video. Your attempts to delete posts and accuse Ms. Sterling of a smear campaign on the community forum have only further implicated you. Brenda felt a cold sweat break out on her forehead. I don't know what you're talking about. I was at home that afternoon. I can provide an alibi. And what would that alibi be, Miss Albright? Officer Chen interjected, his pen poised. I was working on HOA documents. Alone. In my office, Brenda stammered, realizing too late how flimsy it sounded. No witnesses, no proof. Just her word against a damning video. Detective Miller sighed, a small, weary sound. Ms. Albright, we also have reports from the pool cleaning service Ms. Sterling hired. They removed the eels. Live eels. We're investigating where they might have come from. Releasing non-native species can carry additional charges, not just vandalism. The word charges hit Brenda like a physical blow. This wasn't just a spat with Evelyn anymore. This was a legal nightmare. Her carefully cultivated reputation, her control, her entire identity as Brenda Albright, the unassailable HOA president, was crumbling. Why, Miss Albright? Detective Miller pressed, her voice softening slightly, though her eyes remained hard. What possessed you to do something like this? Was it a dispute over HOA regulations? Personal animosity? Brenda's composure finally snapped. The pressure, the public humiliation, the cold reality of her situation all boiled over. She defies me, she blurted out, her voice rising to a frantic pitch. She thinks she's above the rules. The lemon tree, the cushions, that ghastly greenway. She constantly undermines my authority. Someone needed to teach her a lesson, to show her that there are consequences for disrespecting the community's standards. The words hung in the air, a raw, unfiltered admission. Brenda immediately regretted it, but it was too late. Officer Chen was scribbling furiously. Detective Miller exchanged a look with Officer Chen. So, this was a deliberate act of retaliation? Brenda tried to backtrack, to dilute her confession, but the words wouldn't come. Her throat felt dry, her tongue thick. Miss Albright, Detective Miller continued, harassment, vandalism, potential environmental infractions, these are serious matters. And your position as HOA president, far from excusing your behavior, makes it worse. It's a breach of trust with the entire community. The interrogation continued for another hour, a relentless chipping away at Brenda's defenses. She tried to deflect, to minimize, to cast herself as the victim of an ungrateful community, but the video and her own desperate confession stood as stark counterpoints. Finally, Detective Miller pushed a document across the table. This is a statement, Ms. Albright. It outlines the charges we are pursuing: vandalism, harassment, and reckless endangerment of property. We W. The metallic click of the lock, the cold, hard reality of the charges, echoed in the silence of the interrogation room. For Brenda Albright, the next few hours were a dizzying descent into a world she had always thought herself immune from. Her phone, the lifeline to her carefully constructed social and professional network, was confiscated. Her frantic demands for her lawyer, a sharp-suited man who usually handled property disputes and HOA bylaws, were met with calm, professional reiterations of her rights. The booking process was a blur of fingerprints, mugshots, and the chilling recitation of her name and alleged crimes. Brenda, who had spent a lifetime enforcing rules, found herself utterly at the mercy of them. The irony was a cruel twist of the knife. She had sought to impose her will to teach a lesson, and now she was the one being taught a lesson in the most public and humiliating way imaginable. Back in Maple Creek, Evelyn Sterling had just finished reading Lily a bedtime story. The little girl, thankfully oblivious to the drama unfolding in the community, was fast asleep, dreaming of flamingo floats and sunny pool days. Evelyn, however, found herself pacing her living room, a strange mix of vindication and weariness settling over her. The community forum was still alight with outrage, but also with whispers of Brenda's arrest. It was done. The first stage, at least, was over. The next morning brought a fresh wave of communication. Evelyn received a call from a lawyer representing the HOA board, not Brenda personally. The tone was apologetic, almost deferential. They informed her that Brenda had been indefinitely suspended from her position as president, pending a full investigation by the board and the outcome of the police charges. They also expressed their profound apologies for the distressing incident and assured Evelyn that they were taking immediate steps to prevent any similar occurrences. It was a clear capitulation, a hasty effort to contain the damage to the HOA's reputation. Later that day, a reporter from the local newspaper, the Maple Creek Gazette, called Evelyn. The story of Eels in the Pool had clearly gone viral, far beyond the confines of their small community. Evelyn, still wary of turning her personal ordeal into a media circus, politely declined to comment, stating only that she had full faith in the police investigation. She didn't want to gloat, she just wanted justice. Meanwhile, Brenda's legal nightmare was just beginning. Her lawyer, Mr. Henderson, a man whose usual clients were concerned about property easements, found himself navigating the unfamiliar waters of criminal defense. The video evidence was a concrete block in the foundation of their case. Her spontaneous confession to Detective Miller, though not under oath, was equally damning. Mr. Henderson advised Brenda to enter a plea of no contest to the vandalism charges, hoping to avoid a lengthy and even more public trial. He tried to argue for leniency, emphasizing Brenda's long-standing, albeit misguided, service to the community and suggesting that the Eels were more of a prank than a malicious act of endangerment. He even attempted to spin the narrative that Brenda was simply a misunderstood community leader, driven by a passionate, if excessive, desire for order. But the prosecution, armed with Evelyn's clear video footage, Brenda's admission, and the growing outrage from the community, was unyielding. The charges of harassment and reckless endangerment, particularly concerning the safety of children, elevated the incident beyond a mere prank. The environmental aspect, the dumping of potentially non-native species, added another layer of complexity, drawing the attention of local wildlife authorities, who issued their own set of fines. The judge, a stern-faced woman with little patience for frivolous legal arguments, was unimpressed by Brenda's lawyer's attempts to downplay the severity. She reviewed the video, a flicker of disbelief in her eyes, then read aloud Brenda's statement to the police. "Miss Albright," the judge stated, her voice resonating through the small courtroom, "your actions were not only a clear violation of law, but a gross abuse of your position of authority. You deliberately targeted a neighbor, causing emotional distress and property damage, and created a genuine safety hazard for a child. This court views such behavior with extreme seriousness." Brenda sat rigid in her seat, her face pale. She had worn a demure, conservative dress, hoping to project an image of remorse, but her internal turmoil was evident in her tightly clasped hands and the constant shifting of her gaze. After a brief recess, the judge delivered her verdict. Brenda Albright was found guilty of vandalism and harassment. The charge of reckless endangerment was reduced to a lesser charge of disturbing the peace, though the environmental fines remained. Her sentencing, however, was significant. A sue. The courtroom emptied, leaving Brenda Albright with a sense of hollowness far deeper than the echoes in the room. Her lawyer, Mr. Henderson, offered a perfunctory handshake, a brief, strained apology for the outcome, and a stack of paperwork detailing her fines and community service obligations. He clearly considered the matter closed, a difficult case swiftly resolved, and moved on. Brenda, however, felt as if her entire life had just been dismantled, brick by brick in public. Stepping out of the courthouse, Brenda was met not by flashing cameras, but by the far more insidious glares and whispers of former neighbors. The Maple Creek Gazette reporter wasn't there, but the local gossip network was in full swing. Faces she recognized from HOA meetings, from block parties, from casual encounters at the grocery store, now turned away, or worse, met her gaze with undisguised contempt. The shame was suffocating, a burning rash on her skin. She drove home in a daze, her once immaculate SUV now feeling like a mobile prison. Her house, usually a bastion of order and quiet pride, seemed to mock her. The perfect lawn, the pristine paint, all the outward symbols of her carefully cultivated life now felt like a cruel joke. She, the enforcer of perfection, was now publicly flawed, permanently stained. The immediate fallout was swift and brutal. Within hours of the verdict, an email from the HOA's interim board arrived, formally notifying her of her permanent removal and detailing the process to elect a new president. Her name was scrubbed from the HOA website. Her access to the community forum, once her pulpit, was revoked. She was a ghost in her own neighborhood, an unperson. Calls from friends and acquaintances dwindled to nothing. The women she had lunched with, planned charity events with, now ignored her texts and calls. They were, she realized with a bitter pang, fair-weather allies, adhering to the unspoken code of suburban social climbing, aligned with power, abandon weakness. And Brenda Albright was now undeniably weak. But the most crushing blow came from within her own home. Her husband, Arthur, a mild-mannered man who had always deferred to Brenda's organizational prowess and unwavering conviction, had watched the entire ordeal unfold with a quiet, growing horror. He had been a silent witness to her escalating obsession with Evelyn Sterling, his attempts to mediate dismissed with a wave of her hand. Now, as she slumped onto the sofa, defeated and broken, he looked at her with a mixture of pity and profound disappointment. "Brenda," he began, his voice soft, almost a whisper, "what have you done?" She flinched. "I was trying to maintain standards, Arthur. She was disrespecting everything we've built here." Arthur sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "No, Brenda. You were letting your ego run wild. You've humiliated yourself, you dragged our name through the mud, and you jeopardized our financial security with these fines and legal fees. All over Eels. And a lemon tree." He paused, his gaze hardening. "I don't even recognize you anymore." The words, so quiet, were more devastating than any courtroom verdict. Arthur had always been her rock, her steady, unassuming partner. To hear such condemnation from him, to see that look in his eyes, felt like the final splintering of her reality. Evelyn, on the other hand, found an unexpected sense of peace settling over her life. Lily's week-long visit had been filled with laughter and joy, unmarred by the drama that had consumed Evelyn just days before. The pool, professionally cleaned and shimmering once more, became a symbol of her reclaimed sanctuary. The restraining order meant Brenda couldn't come near her, and the community, no longer under Brenda's thumb, seemed to exhale a collective sigh of relief. Neighbors who had once given Evelyn polite, distant nods now stopped to chat, offering words of support and sharing their own Brenda-related horror stories with a newfound camaraderie. Evelyn found herself invited to impromptu coffee mornings, her previously solitary retirement now blossoming with genuine connection. The power shift in Maple Creek was palpable, and Evelyn, though she never sought it, had become an accidental hero. Days turned into weeks. Brenda's community service involved litter pickup along the very greenways she had once policed with such zealous fury. She wore a wide-brimmed hat, sunglasses, and clothes she hoped would make her unrecognizable, but the whispers followed her. "That's her, the old woman, the former HOA president." Each murmur was a fresh lash, a constant reminder of her fall from grace. One sweltering afternoon, as Brenda stooped to pick up a discarded plastic bottle near the edge of the Maple Creek Public Park, she saw them. Children, squealing with laughter, splashing happily in the community splash pad. And amongst them, Evelyn Sterling, sitting on a nearby bench, a relaxed smile on her face, watching Lil.